I am really, really excited to bring the first gentleman onto the stage, the chair of the People's Party. Now, we all know the two big parties in this country, the Democrats and the Republicans, have a stranglehold on U.S. politics. It is very hard for new ideas, new voices, new people to come in and exert some kind of influence. They are holding third parties back. Nick Brana, he is going to come and speak to you about this, and I am so excited. Please put your hands together. Please make him feel welcome. Very excited.
Hey, it's so great to see you all. Is this thing detachable? Yeah, probably, but I guess, I don't know if the camera would catch it. It's great to see you all. It's always. I saw a bunch of you guys in Chicago at the last CPI, big CPI get-together. It was also a fantastic event, like Elizabeth talked about. And so it's great to be with you all again. You know, I want to say a little bit to begin with about the Democracy Summit. And so I did some reading before the event on the Democracy Summit, and it turns out they have these 5 pillars of what they're supposed to be fighting for, what they're supposed to achieve from the last kind of summit they did like a couple of years ago. These are great. So the first one is promoting independent media. Promoting independent media. Not a joke. The next one, protecting journalists. Not a joke. After that, fighting corruption. It's a clown show. It's the United States. We all know what the Democracy Summit really is. It's the United States trying to desperately wrangle together whoever they feel is still in their imperial control and dominion for a veneer of legitimacy for this war that they're waging in Ukraine, the Third World War that they've started right now, and this desperate attempt to maintain American hegemony in a world where the rest of the world is rising and going right by the United States. I want to tell you something else too. So, and I think you'll find this pretty interesting. So, in case anybody didn't know, CPI and everybody here, we are very much on the radars of the security state, of the intelligence agencies, of everybody who is trying to suppress us. And I'm gonna tell you just how much so. So, few days before this gathering, I got an email from none other than Homeland Security. That's right. And they wanted to know where the event was going to be. And this was right after I published my tweet saying that I was going to be there. That's right, not a joke. I'll show it to you later. And so this was a message. It was a message. We know you're going. We know what's going to happen. And we have our eye on you. And that's how threatened they are. And they should be threatened because they know that they don't have a public mandate, a popular mandate. They know that the people aren't with them. If they thought they had any kind of public backing, they wouldn't feel the need to try to threaten or intimidate or send those kinds of messages to people, to activists who are here, who are fighting for a country that doesn't just benefit billionaires and that isn't threatening a nuclear war. So just about a month ago, we organized another event that was very much on their radar. Elizabeth shouted it out. Many others, Rage Against the War Machine. Like Elizabeth said, it was the largest anti-war demonstration in the United States. Thousands of people joined us. The largest demonstration in almost 20 years since the Iraq War. Incredible. And we immediately saw how threatening it was to the powerful, because right afterwards, we were attacked by MSNBC, not once, but twice. Rachel Maddow attacked us on primetime, and Joy-Ann Reid attacked us too. Ironically, MSNBC, though, had another reporter on the ground who apparently didn't get the memo. And so this reporter did. She was obviously new, didn't know very much about, how MSNBC does things. And so she went there and she actually talked to the people and she said, why are you here? And the responses, of course, were not the caricature that Rachel Maddow and Joy-Ann Reid created. It wasn't, Rachel, for anyone who hasn't seen Rachel Maddow's coverage, you got to see it. It's hilarious, Doesn't read a word of the website, doesn't talk to anyone at the event, just sees some Russian flags and says, it's Russia, it's all Russia. They must be completely just pro-Putin, Putin apologists. Well, this other journalist that they sent, she actually talked to people who were at the rally, and they said completely unreasonable things like, we got problems in our communities. And I'm tired of billions of dollars that I pay to our government going to wage wars and kill people abroad. I don't want to start a nuclear war. Someone who had a great sign that I remember that said, nuclear war is really bad climate change. I think that made it into the segment. Another one, Joe Biden is the Nord Stream bomber. That made it into two of them. And we all know, like Arland was talking about, they've changed their story already on what happened with Nord Stream because they're reeling, they're reeling. So now we're supposed to believe that the Ukrainian Justice League, blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Just these rogue Ukrainians that, went and destroyed it, that have the ability, they have this military grade explosives, and they made it to the bottom of the Baltic. But this is the level of the stupidity that they want us to believe, just like they want us to believe that Russia's actual aim here is that, if we don't stop Putin and Russia in Ukraine, then they're going to be rolling through Berlin and Paris and Brussels right after that, and then they're going to cross the Atlantic and they're going to be in New York and Kansas City and Cleveland, Missouri. This is the level of stupidity, though, that they expect us to believe, and the corporate media regurgitates it, no matter how dumb it is, no matter what kind of lack of factual basis it might have. And that's why we're really at a point of a crossroads in this country, like Scott was saying. And, I think shout out to Scott, because Scott is an incredible champion for all of these issues, and he has been for decades. And he gets smeared and attacked in so many different ways. The way he stood up to the Bush administration and the media during the run-up to the Iraq War and tried to stop that war, the way he's tried to stop this war, the way he participated in trying to denuclearize the world, everything that he's done, the treaties that have now been undone. And so I told Scott, and Scott, I think you all know, Scott wasn't able to speak at Rage Against the War Machine, but that wasn't all of our perspective. I certainly wanted Scott there. That's right. But that's a testament to Scott's character, is because Scott knew that in order for the rally to continue and for the cause, he needed to step back. And he did. And that's not something that we wanted, but I've talked to Scott and I told him, we are right there with you for organizing in Central Park in June of next year. 1 million people in Central Park. There we go. So I want to say a word about the crossroads that we find ourselves in now, and why independent parties like the People's Party are so important in this moment. We're at a historic crossroads for America and humanity with so many different converging problems. We have the war in Ukraine. We have a change at the scale of that hasn't been seen globally, geopolitically, that hasn't been seen since the Second World War. We have the greatest scale of change and pace of change now with the rise of the BRICS nations, the application of recently Mexico, of course, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Iran, so many different countries. We are seeing and witnessing in real time the birth of a different world. And it's our imperative now in the United States, as the country that is holding that back and fighting against that, we have the potential to offer an alternative. What if an imperial power, instead of going down in the way that other imperial powers have, as Rome, what if it participated in a militaristic conquest, a final last gasp of trying to wage war around any vassal state or any part of the world that now refuses to conform to its imperial order? What if instead in the United States, we actually participated in creating that world of peace and development in the future? What if we participated instead? What if we actually marked the end of imperialism in human history? That's what we have the chance to do in the United States. But it's not going to come from the Democrat or the Republican parties. Well, at the same time, we find ourselves in a crossroads with the collapse of the financial system. The second and third largest banks failing since the Great Recession. And of course, we all know it was the Democrats that undid the Glass-Steagall protections. They were the ones that undid the financial protections that actually laid the groundwork during the Clinton administration in the 90s for the Great Recession. And then, of course, they fixed nothing during the Great Recession in terms of financial regulations, regulating derivatives, breaking up the merger between investment and commercial banking, doing anything about speculation. And so as a result, we had another financial crash in 2020, and they used COVID to mask this one. Billions of dollars. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And now we're seeing it again. And so as we recognize the patterns of what the establishment does, how they cover up their crimes, how they cover up the fact that the financial system truly hasn't been changed in any substantial way, we know that they're going to do the same thing. Just like exactly the same. They're going to orchestrate something. If they can't contain this banking collapse, and it doesn't look that way, they're going to orchestrate something to blame it on. And look for that. Look for that, because they have other imperial aims that they want to satisfy in Ukraine. So just like you have Ukraine attempting to, the strike in Poland, which may have been a false flag from Ukraine. That also, likewise, you have Ukraine with the United States trying to manufacture some kind, or elements in the United States, some kind of pretext to widen the war. Because, as Scott says so eloquently, so often, Ukraine is losing, and they're going to lose unless they can broaden the war. And even broaden the war to the point of nuclear war. Because we all know that Zelensky said he's already declared his intentions. He was advocating for a nuclear first strike against Russia. That's the level of insanity that we're dealing with. So we have this financial crisis. We have the greatest geopolitical shift that we've had since the end of the Second World War. We have the merging of corporations and state in the United States. And we also have something that I talked about at the last CPI conference in Chicago, and that is the impact of exponentially accelerating technologies. And I want to mention it again because nuclear weapons are not the only existentially threatening technology. But in the way that we develop technology and the paradigm that we have now under complete free reign capitalism, where everything is developed for profit, nothing's developed for, with zero kind of eye to human well-being. You have other technologies that are being developed now, like nuclear weapons, that threaten to exterminate humanity. Geez, dealing with nuclear weapons is bad enough. And the way that we've been brought closer than the Cuban Missile Crisis to the brink of nuclear annihilation is bad enough. But on top of that, we have biological weapons. We know now even elements inside the US government, the Department of Energy, are admitting that COVID came from a lab. And the United States has created variations of COVID that have death rates of 35%, 55%, even up to 80% in labs. How long is it before another version of this either gets leaked or released? Anybody who's looked into how viruses and lab leaks knows that they happen a lot more frequently than anybody wants to believe. And on top of that, you have nanotechnology weapons. You have artificial intelligence weaponry. You have the ability to redirect asteroids that we're developing. You have artificial intelligence itself also being developed for raw power and profit, which some computer scientists are beginning to say, and are beginning to wonder, is it developing sentience? And so that truly emphasizes the absurdity of where we are as a civilization, as a people, the system that we find ourselves in, this decaying capitalist system that is developing a superior intelligence to our species with no safeguards, no public discourse, no kind of protections, no ethical conversation. That's the suicidal level of just disregard for human life that we find now in this system that is led by the United States. So we as the People's Party, we are committed to breaking this system down. We're committed to doing it in partnership with all of you. We're committed to stopping this war. Because as I reflect on what we accomplished at Rage Against the War Machine, at the Lincoln Memorial, in that historic location, it was a great achievement that we brought out thousands of people to protest the war machine right here in the heart of the empire. And I know it's encouraging people abroad in Germany, where 50,000 people came out the next week. And we're building this international opposition to NATO, working with the protest movements in those countries. But as I reflect on Rage Against the War Machine, the thing that I'm most proud of is something that I think that CPI also embodies, and that is that we brought together people from across the political spectrum. We brought together people from left to right. And as we stood there on the steps of that memorial, steeped in the history and the legacy of that place on that sunny day, something amazing happened. We were there with libertarians and communists and socialists and people in the center and leftists. But when we were there, our labels fell away. They were unimportant. We didn't, when we looked at each other both in the crowd and those of us as organizers, we didn't see libertarians, socialists, centrist, leftist. We just saw people. We saw people who want what's best for their families, people who want what's best for their communities, for their country, and for the world. We saw people who were motivated and brought together by a love of humanity and a love of what we're fighting for. And if we could do it there, if we could do it in Rage Against the War Machine, against all the imperial might, without anything but attacks from the corporate media, no promotion, just the independent media bringing it together, then we can do it in other issues, and we can do it in general, and we can bring people together to fight against the oligarchy and imperialism and this country and the corporate state, and we can bring down this system, and we can build something much better that actually serves people in its place. So thank you all for having me. It's good to see you and great to be working with you.